cruel, Max. I used to be good with words, but now I play with rope and tie it around my waist. I wear silly shoes and try walking in them. Tick tock, tick tock. What's that? It's the ticking of the clock. Tick tock, tick tock. What's that? It's the ticking of the clock. Tick tock, tick tock. What's that? It's time. I better get up. I tied myself up in knots, pulled tight around my waist. I wore silly shoes and tried walking in them. Tick tock, tick tock. I tied myself up in knots, but now I've learned how to move. Can't you see? Can't you see? Can't you see? Can't you see? I sit and watch a flickering screen and red lights fill my eyes. Rise! 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 I'm almost sick with fear. He hands me a bag and I bite my mouth. Surprise! 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 I'm smiling through my teeth and they laugh and they judge and I wonder why. It's a cry! 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 And watch a flickering screen and red lights fill my eyes. Rise! 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 Almost sick with fear, he hands me a bag and I bite my mouth. Surprise! 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 I'm smiling through my teeth and they laugh and they judge. I wonder why. It's a cry! Cry! a flickering screen and red lights fill my eyes. Rise! 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 I'm almost sick with fear. He hands me a bag and I bite my mouth. Surprise! 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 I'm smiling through my teeth and they laugh and they judge. I wonder why. It's a cry! 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 I built a tower of resentment. It's flying, flying high. You held a mirror of light. It's shining, shining bright. You held a mirror of light. It's shining, shining bright. La 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 I sit and watch a flickering screen and red lights fill my eyes. Rise! 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 I'm almost sick with fear. He hands me a bag and I bite my mouth. Surprise! 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 I'm smiling through my teeth and they laugh and they judge and I wonder why. It's right! 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 Light! Right! 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 Hello, I'm Nuha Ruby Ra. Today is the launch of How to Move. Thank you, Boiler Room, for having me. And I'm looking forward to chatting to some amazing women later. So stick around. Confession to make. The smell of you is heavy now. While you erase me from your mind. The smell of you is heavy now. While you erase me from your mind. I hide my addictions well. I keep my addictions to myself. The smell of you is heavy, heavy now. While I escape you, my heart is heavy, 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 heavy. The feeling when you finally leave, it's so heavy, 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 heavy. I hide my addictions well, then I wonder why I'm so sticky, 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 sticky to touch. heavy, heavy, heavy. When you lie on top of me, I feel it. The feeling when you finally leave. Heavy, 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 heavy. The feeling when you finally leave. Erase, erase me, erase me from your mind. Erase me, no, erase me, no, erase me, no, don't erase me. I hide my addictions well. I keep my addictions to myself. When you finally leave, erase me, erase me, erase me, erase me, erase me. Erase me, erase me, don't erase me. Yes, yes. Tell me I'm your secret. It does something outrageous. This is a real fucking disaster. I want to watch you squirm with ease. Run your fingers through my hair, through my hair. Get your words out my head, out of my head. You know that being your secret really turns me on. I know you like the occasions where you can call me Sparky, because Sparky knows how to spark you up and keep you exactly where she knows you best. It's safer to keep you there, I'm guessing. No, I don't want you to leave. The leather's still sticky from that Prosecco you poured on me when you thought it was sexy. I can barely stand to look at you, but you still come back. What's your fucking secret? Run your fingers through my hair, through my hair. Get your words out my head, out of my head. I'd like to think you feel like you're in the presence of an angel when you lay eyes on me. Remember the days when I went down south to see you? 2 hours to get there and 336 to leave you. Do you like me talking to you like this? Do you like me talking to you like this? Because I know you love it when I come round. Run your fingers through my hair, through my hair. Get your words out my head, out of my head. vibrating statically now. It feels so good. Xerox machine of joy spitting out. Keep spitting. This shred will blaze up to me. The path of least resistance will take you far. I can hear the sound of a steady beat. The sound of the march, 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 and the sound of I hate you begun. No, I can't say I love you. I can't say anything at all. I just want to touch you up and pull you down to me and know that I'm the goddess of fire. Look before I disappear now. Remember, it's hard to resist what you feel now. Inside, I held you. I never missed you. So much before now. I know you now. What's your secret, simple girl? What's your secret, simple girl? It's only 3,000 miles. I fought for 3,000 miles. I flew 3,000 miles. It's hard finding this time. It's time I came to to take small steps in the wrong direction. Small steps, big moves in the right direction. But I still miss you. Thank you for being with me, and thank you for having me, Boiler. Hello and welcome back. We are at the Boiler Room in Guildford celebrating International Women's Day, and we've just had an amazing performance from Nuha Ruby Ra? Yeah. Wow, that was cool.
Great.
Thank you very much. I'm still in slight recovery mode from it. But yeah, it was really fun.
Actually, it's amazing to see someone like come up on stage and then sit down and have a conversation immediately after performing like that.
Yeah, it's a change, definitely. Normally I'm just in the back being like, sprawled out on the floor. But yeah, this is way more civilized.
So we should introduce ourselves. This is the Women in Music panel. I believe we are 3 women in music. So I'm Ruth Pearce. I am a musician, a punk musician. I try not to call myself a musician because that feels like a step too far maybe, but I'm also a DJ and event promoter and a sociologist, and I've done some research on queer, trans and feminist punk music. And I am joined here today by Nuha. Sorry. I'm just getting that thing where we're just like, whoa, we're on a stage.
Yeah. I'm Nuha Ruby Ra, and I'm a musician and artist.
And we also have Lesley.
Yeah, hi, I'm Lesley-Anne O'Brien, and I'm an artist manager at my own company called Onslaught Music. I also manage a label called Lockjaw Records, which is a European DIY punk and hardcore label. Mega fun. And I also play in a band called the Midwich Cuckoos.
So, yeah, like it's been a bit of a year for like music performance, obviously, both in terms of bands we're putting on and our own performances. Like, how have you both found the last year?
It's been really interesting. I mean, for myself, it hasn't been really creative, but it's been super productive. I guess, demoing things online with bands. As part of the label, we've really had to shift gear and sort of promote online and do things more online, which has been super interesting. So it's been good. But the sort of enjoyment of gigs and being a bit more creative, I feel like I haven't had the chance. How about you?
I've had a mainly really good year. I kind of put myself in the mindset of not thinking, what I would be doing if there wasn't a lockdown and there wasn't a pandemic, and more just being like, okay, what's going on? What can I do? So I've kind of decided to go ahead with releasing the EP, which came out today. And previous to that, we were releasing singles, I guess, from the record. And I started writing for my next record. So I've been doing that and sort of started demoing it recently. So I've kept myself busy.
Wow, it's really busy.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's been good. It's been good. I've definitely, I feel like I've made the best of it that I can.
I feel like I've done very little. And I think maybe that's okay. It's really nice to have a range of experiences here.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for the first couple of months of lockdown, I just read, which I hadn't for years and years. I haven't read just in my normal sort of free time or time. The only time I read was in tour vans, and that's it, on long journeys in Europe maybe. With my previous band that would have been. So it's been a long time. So in the first couple of months I was like, I'm just gonna read. I'm not gonna do anything else. It's really nice. Went on like a million walks like everyone else. Tried to not have too many panic attacks at the beginning and read a lot. Yeah.
I mean, have you, during this lockdown time, have you sort of contemplated how the situation has either helped or hindered women in music?
I think I personally don't know whether I can sort of gender the difficulty that's been going on for anyone creatively or otherwise. I think that we've all been in the same boat, regardless, apart from personal circumstance. I think we've all been in the same boat regardless of our gender. It's been a tough time, and it's been a strange time of adjustment. I don't think that I have any experiences that I would say that are like specifically to do with being a woman that have made life strange. I think I share them with most people. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the reason that I ask is, I mean, on a one-to-one basis, there's not been a lot of interaction, to sort of, I guess, experience anything different. But I guess after the murder of George Floyd last year, I think there was a lot of discussion in the media and just generally about, Black Lives Matter. And I think that's also progressed onto environmentalism. And I'm just wondering whether, after lockdowns and, sort of COVID subsides, will the world be a different place? Will people be more conscientious, perhaps? What do you guys think?
I think. I think so. I think it's that the pandemic and the lockdown have gone on for that extra mile where I think people. I don't know whether issues regarding race or the environment are going to necessarily specifically change drastically, but I think people's approach to each other and to themselves, to how maybe they find them fit in life in general, will definitely be addressed differently. I think if the pandemic or the lockdown had been shorter, then maybe it would have been like, oh right, okay, that was weird, and now it's back to normal. It's gone on for a bit too long that I think there'll be a slight change of consciousness, definitely.
I guess, like, in a sense, it's up to us, isn't it? Like, there's a lot of people who have vested interests in bringing things back to normal after the pandemic, and that ranges from, obviously, like, the government not giving nurses a pay rise, but right through to, like, there's going to be people putting on gigs, and it's just going to be, I love a load of all-male bands, but, there's going to be a load of all-male bands playing all-male gigs, and there's going to be girls standing at the back again. And it's like, oh, well, that's a pity. And I think, like, all of these things are things we can be thinking about. Okay, how do we hit the ground running after this? And bearing in mind, we're all going to be tired, like, and stressed. But, like, how are we going to address, like, racial inequality and sexual inequality and rampant destruction of the environment in terms of running our shows and building the world we want to see in our scenes, which is something we do have control over after this?
I mean, I guess my fantasy is that, like, sort of beyond lockdown, there's like a bit of a cultural revolution that people aren't willing to just let things pass by. Maybe we have like a ton of bands getting super political more than they were, and like a bit more active, and just sort of a new wave, perhaps like a new wave of riot girl punk. I have no idea. I guess we just have to see how things come together. But I think like how things come together is going to be amazing. I think there's going to be a lot of hunger for like live gigs and emotion and, kind of putting your heart on the sleeve. So I guess we just have to see what naturally follows. But it's interesting what you said, what we can do on a day-to-day level, whether it's promoters, what type of bands they book, what kind of nights they put on, I guess, to take the lead.
I mean, just to add to what you've said, I think that people have probably really missed just humanity, and I think there's a lot of ego that's been dropped, I feel, with people in general, because I mean, I don't want to say that this has been a leveler for everyone, because people are in vastly different situations. But I think that with some people, it definitely has sort of rechecked their ego somehow, and who they are and how they see themselves, where they want to position themselves. And I think people have missed the presence of each other, and sort of, I've played a couple of gigs socially distanced during the lockdown, and the first one that I played, which was one of the really early ones that happened, it was amazing how people were just so fucking excited, like so happy, so appreciative, really just savoring what was going on, and I felt like a kind of a a different level of appreciation and respect and for the people in front of them. I would hope that this would also sort of translate to there being a lack of the gender and race kind of issues. I mean, this obviously is a very wide topic, and also it depends on your location where these things happen. Like, I live in London. London is a lot more open-minded and a lot more inclusive. Depends on where you are in the world, I guess. So you can only really speak from your own perspective. But yeah, I think hopefully the kind of humanitarian kind of side of people will show through more, and that will help with race issues, with gender, with hopefully the environment as well. Maybe people taking a lot more walks and appreciating nature will be like, oh, nature, oh my God, it's not just about me. There's other, yeah.
I really hope we can like work on maintaining that energy, because just watching you play just now was electrifying. Like, that was such a privilege to be present for a performance like that.
Thanks for being here for it. Yeah, it felt great. It's been a while. I didn't really like comprehend what was going to happen until I was playing, and yeah, it felt quite emotional at the end. It was like, oh my God, it's been a really long time. That's what it's all about. That, you know, well, for me, what I've chosen to do, it's about performing the music all in front of people. So I'm glad that you guys were here.
It was great, and it was emotional to watch as well.
Yeah, massively. I mean, actually, I have a practical question, because increasingly, it's like there's bands working on things like music videos at the moment, or thinking about kind of ways of performing differently. Like, did it feel like you were at home, like singing with a hairbrush in front of the mirror, or did you feel like there was this audience on the other side of the cameras that have been carefully hidden away by the boiler room here?
I've got an active imagination, so I imagine that there is loads of people there, like so many more people than I've ever seen at any of my gigs. Just like watching, and yeah, so yeah, that definitely helped. But at home, I had to do some live streams at home, and had to kind of put the same kind of head on.
There's a lot of potential there, isn't there? Like, reaching beyond, like, if we're streaming gigs and stuff. You know, we might do a little gig, and we might have, like, if it's a DIY gig, it might be like between 30 and 200 people or whatever. But then if we're streaming to hundreds of people on the internet, there's so much potential for like growing the reach of like the stuff we create.
Yeah, definitely. And I've always wondered whether it would have like a sort of an event, which is, you know, you can watch the performance live, and it's also recorded for people online. You know, that gives an opportunity for a lot of bands to be heard sort of internationally, really. I think it would be really good benefit. And I'd be also up to watching like a gig that perhaps happens in a different part of the country that I'm not able to check out.
There is definitely something that's really great about that. There's also another thing where there is a magic to knowing that you witnessed a gig and you were there to see it, and if you didn't see it, then you're like, oh, if only I'd made it to that gig, and then you'd make sure that you went to the next one, because as much as definitely it's a great thing to be able to have access to seeing gigs that you might not get the chance to, because you know, bands tend to play in major cities, and if you live in a small town somewhere, you might not get that chance. For that reason, it's great. But there is a magic that you can't really compare to being in the same room.
Yeah, there's nothing quite like it, and I really hope actually that this appetite that people have for being in each other's company again might lead to more vibrant scenes in places like Guildford. Like, let's do stuff here, you know. It's kind of, it feels sometimes like we have to go to the big city. I spent much of the last decade of my life in Leamington Spa, which is near Coventry, and we'd always go to Coventry or to London, and it was quite a lot of effort to run gigs locally. And yeah, trying to maintain that feels really important.
I mean, I don't always have a great comprehension of the size of places that I play, but I played here the year before last with Snapped Ankles, and it was amazing. It was one of my favourite gigs of the whole tour. So in my mind, Guildford's this really big place, and because it had such a huge like vibe on the night, and it was amazing. So yeah, I think there are places maybe that would still obviously get missed out. I mean, Guildford, I guess, is quite small. I don't actually know how many gigs, how many venues there are in Guildford. Really? Wow.
Only the one.
Wow.
The
well,
one that matters.
You do a great job. Yeah. That's why the vibes were so high here. I don't know what I was going to say.
Well, it's interesting to hear you grew up in Leamington Spa. I'd be interested to know, like, hear from both of you, sort of what kind of challenges you've sort of faced in your career being a woman, and how do you feel that those have probably changed or pivoted, like in the future? I mean, at the moment.
When I started playing early days with bands, I had the feeling, which was mostly true, not with the intention of my bandmates, but with, I don't know, other outside things, that my presence was quite gratuitous as a woman. And it was like, there's a girl that looks nice on stage, maybe like, that will be like good for the band, that'll be good for the night. I've been in the presence of people being like, oh, we need to get some girls on the band, but like not for the right reasons. We need to get some girls on the band. And starting especially as a solo artist, I was definitely aware of the fact that I had to probably try to prove myself more than if I was a man, to be, to validate, I guess, myself as a musician or as an artist that is equal to men that are in the same place as me. Because women, most of the time, no matter how talented they are, or this goes for men as well, regardless of talent, if you're a guy, you don't really get judged on your looks. You don't get judged as heavily maybe on the music that you're making, or I don't know. There is something about how you have to really prove yourself as a woman, I think, in music, to be taken as seriously, I guess, as a man. I haven't felt that for a while. Maybe it just like comes with getting older and giving less of a shit in some ways, maybe being a bit more sure of yourself because you've done this for a long time. But
do you think attitudes have changed?
I do think they have. In the last few years, I definitely think they have. I think there's been a lot of sort of voices sort of speaking about this, and there's been a lot of scenes that have been kind of like very much sort of like catered to bringing out women in music specifically. So I think things definitely have changed from like 10 years ago, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I really hear you, Nuha, on that thing on being like judged differently to the kind of men, and actually that stopped me playing music for years. Like when I was a teenager, like all these boys were like picking up guitars and joining bands. It was like the early noughties, so you had that indie wave and everyone wanted to be a horrible sweaty libertine or whatever. And I was just getting into metal and stuff. So what I did was I started running gigs instead. I was like, it's too late. Like I'm 17, it's too late to start playing guitar. And so I started running gigs with my friends.
Never too late.
I know. This is what I now tell people. It is never too late. So like I actually grew up in Bath rather than Leamington. And I moved to Leamington like in my early 20s. And I was still running gigs, and most of the lineups were just like I'd put on my mates' bands and some bands I saw that I liked. So it was almost all men. And it was almost all white men. And I didn't really think about that. I was just like, oh, I'm into rock and metal. And then I was always like questing around for bands that looked different, or like, and first it was like woman fronted bands. And then it was kind of like, You know, like, here's a band with like one woman, here's a band with like one black guy on guitar, and it was just like, what's actually like happening here? Who's visible? Because there's lots of amazing people not only playing music but also coming to the shows, and like it doesn't look like that on stage. So like two things happened when I was living in Leamington. Like, one is that I started listening to more music kind of like made by more diverse people than just like the kind of indie bands and heavy metal bands I'd grown up with. But secondly, like a friend of mine at the time said, do you want to join a punk band? And I was like, oh, great, I don't need any skill. You know, don't need any technical knowledge. So I just started screaming and slamming a bass around. And that was just an absolute revelation, because we were still judged against the guys, but it was like, oh, we'll try to do something different. We played a gig once with like a death metal band, and they were all very technically proficient, but they were there in their not very good corpse makeup. And they were trying to be scary, but there wasn't anything scary about a man playing half naked. But there was when you've got two women at the front of the band, and we stripped off all our clothes and we've written like slurs in lipstick all over our bodies. That's proper, that is. So
that sounds very similar to what happened to me. I think we shared quite a similar kind of like start out in music, definitely. But yeah, this is, oh, sorry. I was going to say, this is a thing with like, you know, like for instance, you go and see like, you know, with rock bands, with punk bands, men on stage with their tops off, really sweaty, in like fucking boxer shorts or like trousers, whatever. No one mentions the fact that they're sweaty and topless and writhing around. And in the same fucking energy, in exactly the same energy, you're playing, you know, same energetic kind of music as a woman. You do that, and loads of creepy, disgusting men like make you feel really uncomfortable, or at least try to make you feel uncomfortable, or it gets talked about, and you know, about there being, you know, like with my old band, Arrows of Love, we had on the day that I think there's a Pussy Riot hearing, like most of the band were at the Russian embassy, and then we had a gig that night, and there was like 3 guys and 2, me and another girl, and me and the other, basically I was just in pants and a veil, and she was in boxer shorts, and that's it. And then we had like loads of like sort of Pussy Riot support writing on us. And it was, I mean, generally speaking, sometimes I wear hardly any clothes when I play. Sometimes I wear like this and various things in between. It doesn't really matter. But that night, after that, there was so many gigs that people were just like, oh, you're the band where the girls play naked. And it's just like, and they turned up for that reason. And it's like, it's quite depressing. But it's like that was like a driving force behind it. It would be really nice for that for at least for it not to be acceptable to actually say that out loud at some point. You can think it if you want, just maybe don't say it to make people feel weird in their own skin when they're playing. But yeah.
I guess it's a great thing that the attitudes are changing, you know, from the audiences. You know, I think one of the things that I find a bit irksome is the whole female-fronted bands. Like, what is that? It's, you know, is it a genre? And I find it a bit odd also to perhaps like book shows and say, hi, we're a female-fronted band. But at the same time, how do you address what you're doing as a sort of woman or from a minority, really? It's a bit of a conundrum. What do you guys think?
Well, I was wondering what your experiences were, because you're in I think we've all been in female-fronted bands. Am I right? Female-fronted bands. What's your experience been of like tackling that, Lesley?
I think when I was initially playing with bands when I first moved to the UK and early 2000s, it wasn't an issue really in sort of our sort of small scene, but I was definitely a minority. Didn't see, it's the majority of women I saw were really behind the scenes, like promoting, doing photography, and doing amazing things. After, I guess, stepping away and, you know, looking for bands to work with and sort of looking for generally new music, it was really, you'd gravitate to the female-fronted bands if you sort of wanted some sort of female energy, you know. But I guess there's also that sort of perception that it's maybe a bit second-rate, which I find very unfortunate. I don't, especially I think that this was like a sort of older attitude. I think that's dramatically changed. If you go to a bill with a lot of women on the lineup, it's very supportive. It's a great atmosphere. It's like, why aren't more people at this show? So I think it's, I don't know whether the marketing needs to sort of change, or perhaps the idea is just a bit archaic. Maybe we just need a different term for female-fronted bands or something.
I don't think there should be any term for it. I don't. I've never seen myself as a minority, and I've never seen myself as a woman specifically. I don't really think about it, to be honest with you, and same how I look at other people. I really don't enjoy much talking about being a female artist or being a non-white artist, because I think it's really irrelevant. I think that it's something that we really need to move past, and I understand why it's talked about, and I think it is valid. But personally, for me, I think that I kind of, you know, hope we can move towards more of an egalitarian world where this is really irrelevant to talk about what your gender is and what your race is. Like, who gives a fuck? And the more that it's like, you think about, I don't think about my identity as a female, like a female artist or a non-white artist. I am who I am, and I'm a human, same as you and everyone else that's watching. You know, like, so I think personally for me, it's just, it would be, there is no need for like more labels to put on things. It'd be nice to strip away the labels. No need for any labels. We're just humans, and that's it, just doing our own thing. And for it just to be talked about as in what that person is doing, and about their art, about their work, their practice, whatever it is, and we can just discuss that and not discuss anything else to do with them on a personal level of what box they fit into.
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment. I really wish the world could be a bit more like that. But I guess the fact that, you know, us as women are struggling with inequality, economics, and just the world in general, there sometimes needs to be language and sometimes, I guess, labels for us to find support, solidarity, to say that we're here. And maybe it's just that we need to change our language and find something that's more empowering. So, you know, is it called female energy band? Do we bring back Riot Grrrl? Because, you know, I would love to see more ladies screaming their heads off at a show. And where do I find that? What am I typing into Google? Do we need better language?
I mean, the weird thing is a lot of it's happening, right? We're all in bands. I know we've probably all played with like other women in bands doing stuff, and it's about reaching it. And the great paradox is, like, I want to achieve what you're talking about, Nuha. I don't want any of this to matter. Like, in my first band, Not Right, we were really frustrated because there was a man on drums and there were two women, and we were, you know, at the front of the band playing guitar and bass and vocals. And then people would call us a female band, and we were like, how dare you? Like, Snowy matters. Like, he's a guy and he's in our band. But equally, like, it meant things. People would come up to us and go, oh my God, I feel I can do this, because like we were shoddy. And then I would always challenge the audience, and I'd say, like, if you want to form a band, like, if you think you can do better than this, do it. Like, join a band, form a band. Anyone can form a band. And I kind of, I'm really interested in how we can talk about that, what labels we can put on it, which aren't just pigeonholing ourselves and other people, and how we can bring people in. Because part of this is also making people that they feel they can play music, you know? Like, it's simply, like, there's nothing that means that women are less bad than men at playing music. It'd be stupid to say that. But it's a fact that less women feel that they can, like, pick up a guitar or a keyboard or whatever. And it's like, how do we get past that without doing this kind of weird lean in thing where we blame women for, like, the inequalities you just talked about, Lesley?
Good question.
I think I don't know. I think it would be really nice to inspire from, I don't know, maybe let me say from starting from like young ages, because that's how people can maybe grow up with certain ideas. It's just to inspire and help, you know, girls. And I really don't like to sort of separate things, because I think boys too, because I think that boys have their struggles as well. You know, the patriarchy is awful for men. It's not just awful for women. I think, you know, as, let's say, just in the realms of being an artist, then, you know, inspire people to speak their truth in what they do. And, yeah, just like give them love and encouragement to do that. Just speak your truth. Don't care what anyone else might think of you. Don't care what prejudgments that it might have, because they're their problem. It's not your problem. You just worry about finding your truth with what you do, regardless of what gender you see yourself as. But for me, I think that would be what I would have personally liked to have from a young age, at least, or at any point in my life.
No, I guess definitely seeing more women playing instruments at the front of bands and behind scenes definitely is like a sort of a motivator. And I feel that if we just show up and make sure that we're seen and do a good job and just be ourselves, that should really encourage younger people and other people to maybe give it a go.
I think that's part of the story, but I don't think it can be the whole story, because this is something I really noticed when I was DJing in the like late noughties and early 2010s. I noticed all these like bands with women in, and especially, dare I say it, female-fronted bands, started disappearing out of people's consciences. And like in the early 2000s, you know, I could be DJing a rock night, kind of be putting on Skunk Anansie or Garbage or whatever alongside, you know, Nirvana and Blur or whoever from the 90s. And then as the decade went on, people were still dancing to the like male-fronted bands. Let's call them that, like a male-fronted band. They were dancing to the male-fronted bands, but not the female-fronted bands. And that wasn't like my fault as a DJ or even the audience's fault. It was like what you were hearing on the radio. It was like who was like being featured in magazines still. And then I noticed that happening with like all these, you know, kind of like amazing new bands were coming through, and then these amazing new women were then being forgotten. Like it was this horrifying point in the early 2010s when suddenly like all these people who'd been listening to Paramore were stopping doing so, and that wasn't my jam, but I was like, at least that exists, you know. And so like I feel we have to fight that as well. We have to fight for people to still be talking about that. And I do think that's changing. Like you listen to the radio now and there are more like women artists, for example, so like
female DJs as well, all across the board. And I think, yes, attitudes are changing, but I feel as sort of punk being a lot more grassroots, we have the ability to change what we actually do on a day-to-day basis, where we might not be able to change the larger sort of more mainstream music industry, which unfortunately is still very male and the sort of manager up levels. But, you know, as a promoter, as a DJ, we can choose to, you know, support and sort of shine a light on those people that truly deserve it for making great music. And I think that's the power that we have as sort of grassroots musicians and culture makers. You know, they're going to be all looking at us and what we're doing and the fun that we're having. and want a slice of that.
Exactly, that's the thing. Like those, you know, like the sort of big, major, mainstream kind of thing. They do look to what is happening within the underground realm of things, and then when things are kind of are loud enough, in a way, like when voices are loud enough and changes are loud enough that are happening, then they get in on that because they want to be relevant to what's going on. I mean, do you know what I mean? It's just like, so it's kind of, it is down to, I guess, you know, us, the scene that all within, to just to kind of like be extra loud about our thoughts and what we do.
And we got to like build each other up to make that happen. Cause yeah, like this idea of, you know, kind of like we're at the grassroots, so we can make things happen. We can think about who we're booking, like who we're playing with, you know, like I think so. There's some really cool stuff that kind of came out of the riot girl scene in the States and has started happening here, of things like girls' rock camps, where like not just for like young girls, but sometimes things for like women to get involved. And there's really interesting things happening. There's a thing called First Timers in London, where what they do is they're like, okay, like you can have a band and anyone can be in the band, but we want at least 50% of the band to be, and then they've got a list. And it's like everyone who normally gets left out, it's like at least 50% have to be like women and or people of color and or disabled people and or LGBTQ people. And I like things like that are really cool. Like not just kind of like saying, oh, it'd be great to have people on stage, but also saying, hey, we're gonna train each other to play instruments. And sometimes someone who comes in and like, oh, I play guitar, can learn to play keyboard. And we did a queer fest in Leamington in 2015, and something I'm so glad we did is we had a woman who did sound, and like so often you go to gigs and it's always a dude doing sound, and we had her come in and was like, she was just showing everyone, here's what it is, like here is literally what this thing does on the desk. And I think like sharing that with each other and booking each other's acts and all that kind of stuff and shouting out about how great everyone's bands are, like that's the way we build this up together.
Yeah, and I think it's really great to see like the music industry like have some mirror that. I won't use the big word. You know, like there's organizations like She Said, which is highlighting what women do in the industry, and also like having events where mentoring and just talking about the music industry. And I think that's really important for us to have in all different sectors, you know, front of house as well. It's really important. And yeah, I think the best... what is really encouraging is when I have gone to music industry events, whether it's the Music Managers Forum or AIM, to see the change in how diverse everybody is when showing up. Because when I initially started going to those events like 20 years ago, you know, I was the youngest in the room. I was pretty much the only female. And now seeing how people are coming in with a lot of gusto, a lot of energy, and you know, I used to struggle before, like I'm talking to men who are probably sort of decades older than me as well. And there'd be no sort of connection there. We like the music, but you're not like invited to go hang out after or go catch a band, which is, you know, you want to be in the music industry finding new acts and stuff. And this has dramatically changed. I'm speaking to people who are older, younger, from this part of the country and from overseas. And it's like, hey, do you want to go to this bar? They play great music after. And that's been an absolute joy. And I think that's, for me, a really big indicator that things are changing, and I hope it progresses.
That sounds promising.
That is deeply cool. So we started getting some questions from the internet. So we got something from Jeff Taylor, who says, as the male front person of a mixed gender band, a male fronted band. What
How
more?
dare you?
Hi, Jeff. What more should I be doing to, in some way, further the cause of women in music? What do you think?
If you play with female musicians, make sure that you're playing with them for their merits and not as a gratuitous act of having a woman in your band.
And I guess if you find a band that you like with women in it, shine a light on them, do gig swaps, you know.
Yeah, take them on tour, like run a gig, put them on. I mean, I think something like sometimes like men can do in bands is like refuse to play on all male white lineups or a lineup with just one woman or whatever. Like, I mean, it depends, but I found this really difficult when like most bands I've been in, there's been other women in the bands, but I was in a doom metal band and I had a great time, but there were like two guys and I was just playing bass, and it was just like being on an all-male lineup and being the only woman there. On one hand, it was amazing because there were these women at the back of the room who were like, oh my God, you're headbanging or whatever. But on the other hand, there were like, you know, guys yelling like, get out your tits and all of that shit. And it was like, oh, I don't want to be on that stage again. And I kind of feel like something a dude in a band can do is be like, okay, we'll support lineups that have lots of different people on, like not as tokenism, just like, because it's not tokenism if there's loads of you.
Yeah, I mean there are even like other categories that you can kind of shine a light on further. So for instance, a friend of mine has done a lot of work in Calais with refugees, and he's become really good friends with a lot of people that he met from there. And I was hanging out with him one night a while back, and he was just like, oh, I'm going to this like a sort of like a Syrian like gig party basically. And I was like, what, where is that? And it was like, it was kind of like a private kind of thing that was going on. And basically he talked to me about these amazing musicians, these amazing bands that were predominantly Syrian refugee musicians. And I was just like, fuck, how are we not integrated in any way, even within a level of like where personally I'm at, you know, like within sort of underground, grassroots kind of like level of things. And that's a really big segregation. You know, it's like I don't know how, and I didn't, you know, I wasn't invited to the party. It was he knows them really well. But he was just like, you would really love this. He talked to me about it afterwards, and he was like, you would love this. He's, you know, the music that he was, you know, the gig that he was at sounded very much like it would be musicians that should be present and should be involved in the kind of lineups that I play on and people that I know play on. But, you know, that's a whole other world that, you know, that needs a lot of care and a lot of inclusivity. And, you know, like there is a whole load of people that are now, you know, live with us. They're here and they need to be involved. There are musicians, women, men, you know, and I think, yeah, that's something that hasn't even been in any way kind of addressed to my knowledge, at least. But yeah, it's I think it's good to kind of sort of try and like widen things even more. We're doing really, really amazing progress regarding inclusivity with women and with non-white musicians, but there is kind of like still the boxed kind of stuff, and it needs to kind of like open out a bit more still.
That's the problem with women in music, isn't it? Because like if you're just doing women in music, you're not thinking about ways to support like migrant musicians or whatever. And it's something I've found, like as a trans woman, as I've found there's often like nights that focus on women musicians, and then they're like, oh, like we're not quite sure what to do with you, or we're going to be like, oh my God, wow, like we're so equal, like we're going to have this trans band and you're going to headline or whatever. And it's like, I'm like, okay, but are there any other, sometimes it'll be in a queer scene, right? So there'll be loads of different queer people and there might be loads of trans men, but there won't be any other trans women on the lineup. And I think with all of these things, it's like, it's moving beyond those boxes, and it's like, how can we build inclusive music scenes, and not just like inclusive to be like cool or have a buzzword, but inclusive in like, this is something that anyone can get involved in, and we're doing the effort to do that.
I think we just need to invite those people over. I mean, the first thing, if you're connecting with somebody or something, ask them. You know, when I first came to the UK and I really found, I had no connections, but if I found a band that I really liked, I'd message them and see if they wanted to do a gig swap. And if they can't, you can always invite a band member to come to your night, you know, kip on your sofa, and establish that relationship, because I think that's, you know, quite key to growing things. You know, maybe next time they'll get the band over. And I think the same thing goes for sort of, you know, you were mentioning that band, and I think that reminded me of that band in Iraq. They had that documentary, and the band had to split up and were sort of refugees in sort of Europe. But I think a couple of them got to get together in Germany and still play their songs. And, you know, it was such a cathartic sort of way for the band to sort of transition amongst sort of all this horror that they were kind of sort of dealing with in their day-to-day lives. And I think, you know, punk is pretty much run on people sharing lifts and sleeping on floors. If we just ask more people, not just stick to the same people that you know, to build the scene and sort of build that community.
Totally, I couldn't agree with that more. Do we have any more questions on the internet? I cannot see any more questions on the internet. This is an open call to the internet, but do we have any more questions for each other?
I can't think.
We have solved all the world's problems at this point.
It's all sorted. Sorted it all out. I can't think. Internet?
Well, I just want to say quickly how much I appreciate someone writing on their body for a gig. Like, yeah. I love it.
I've never tried that.
Oh, you've got to write on yourself. You've got some stuff to get. Yeah, it's good.
It's very empowering. Like, anything you want to say or anything you don't like people saying about you, it can be either. Like, you just write on yourself.
I might take you guys up on that.
You want to go back?
What would you recommend to perhaps some women out there watching, thinking about picking up a guitar or maybe a camera and sort of getting involved in their local scene? What do you reckon they should do as a first step?
I think that with maybe more with the guitar, I think first, don't get any lessons from anyone. Just spend like a good few months just getting to know that guitar in your own way. Don't get any lessons. Just get your own relationship with that instrument. Find out what sounds you can make from it, what you can do with it, and then if you find yourself on a path where you're getting a lot from it that way, then keep going that way without still getting lessons from anyone, and keep exploring and keep pushing that way. And if any stupid men tell you to go and learn how to play it properly, tell them to fuck off and keep doing what you're doing. And then when you feel like you've gone as far as you want with getting to know that instrument that you're using, and then you kind of want to go the next step of finding out how to use it in the traditional sense, then get some lessons from someone that you trust, understands you, because by that point I think you would have understood what you're looking for to do with that thing, with that guitar. It's maybe a little bit different with the camera. With the camera, maybe there's a few things you might actually just need to understand first of how it works to take a picture, from starting from really basic kind of place. But I think it's good to kind of get to know something yourself first, and then when you seek help to know how to progress within what you do, then I think your instinct will kick in a bit, and you'll know who the right person is for you to kind of help you move on with the next step. Because egos are incredibly fragile when you're starting out with something, and if you get the wrong person to be telling you what to do, it can really destroy you from early on. So yeah, I think just empower yourself with your relationship with the thing that you want to do first for a while before seeking help is my personal advice.
How about you?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. And I mean, for me, one of the biggest things when I was starting out was finding people who would understand me to play with. And you don't have to play with other people. There's so many amazing bedroom producers and stuff these days. But yeah, it was finding like Kirsty, who invited me to join me the band, and Snowy, who was the drummer, and like all three of us were starting from a similar position of incompetence, and that really helped. But later, when I joined a metal band with like a really talented guitarist and a really talented drummer, like they gave me space for where I was, and it's about finding people you can work with. For me, and also that thing of like we were saying earlier, like anybody can do it, and you can do it at any age. I remember when I was younger going and seeing Gogol Bordello and like this like fiddler in his 70s or something like rocking out, and it's like, wow, he became a rock star, like, you know, and he's very grey haired and he's got his beard and whatever, and it's like, yeah, like you can do it at whatever age, whenever you want to, and it doesn't have to be like on a huge stage. It could be like in a little venue with your mates.
That's very true. Like both of the points. I guess for me, it would be that, especially if you're on the non-performing side, just be unapologetically you, believe in yourself, and just do it anyway. Don't give a crap what anybody else thinks. Because I think you might sort of, when you're on course to do things, you might speculate whether you're doing the right thing or not. Just do it, make mistakes, and have fun.
Yeah, that's so important.
It's very important to make loads of mistakes. Definitely. You can't be scared of making mistakes.
And what the guys think, what even the girls think. I think you just need to just be headstrong and just make things happen. Have fun along the way.
I mean, if you're playing punk music, you can make mistakes on stage and it can be part of the performance. Like, I once played a really great gig, and this guy who kind of came to all our gigs came up afterwards, and he was like, that was really good, but like it was a bit slick. Like, I love it when something goes wrong with you guys, because you just kind of go, you really go for it then.
Styling it out is a whole art in itself. It's like once you've learned the art of styling it out, it's like, okay, yeah, playing in punk bands will teach you that, definitely.
Like, I'm so amazed at how many people say that was a wicked solo. I'm like, it was not supposed to sound like that, but if you think it's great, it was great.
You just keep going.
Yeah, it's great fun.
We've had some more questions. What 3 words would you use to describe your experience as women in music?
I feel like we need the countdown theme playing right now. Well, that's
challenging at first.
Oh, I can't beat that. Challenging at first. That's like a poem. Like, there's so much meaning. I'd say like joyous, normal, and fucked. Like.
Nike are gonna have a copyright on me. I think just do it. Like, yeah, that's been my motto. Just do it.
Nike definitely shouldn't own that.
No, they don't.
And we've had another question as well. What's your favourite moment from a gig? Let's have a story.
Oh, you hit on something.
I don't know if it's my favourite moment, but like, is this appropriate to say?
Yes. No.
No. I'm gonna think about this for a bit more.
It's like having to pick your best child or best song or band. This is hard. There's been so many moments.
Tell us about a moment.
Oh, I'm trying to think of a memorable one. Just scanning up.
Sometimes I find like a really terrible moment can be a really great moment. Like, we played a gig where we just kind of like we had some pretty heavy kind of like rock girly punky songs, and like we had something that at one point like mentioned rape and addressing that. And there were some guys in the audience, and we'd loved their band. They'd been on before us, and we'd been there dancing. And then they just started going, rape, should rape you or whatever. And it's just kind of like shit. So I was like, right, I'm going to fuck them up. So And so like what we did, and my band totally backed me up, which I was really grateful for. I was like, we have the microphone, and that's worth bearing in mind if you're on a stage, you've got the microphone. So I just kind of yelled obscenities at them for like about 3 minutes straight while the bouncers removed them from the venue. And it was a really big venue, so it took ages for them to gradually leave. And like that was an awful moment, but it was also kind of joyous because it was just like, you guys suck. And there's something powerful about having the microphone and being able to own that and get back at people.
Okay, I've thought of one. I don't know, one at least. So this is with my previous band. It was at a London festival, and we were headlining one of the tents there, and the time management wasn't, let's say, at its best on that day. So by the time it came to us playing, there was a curfew, obviously. We had 20 minutes to play, and so 20 minutes went, and then we were just based on we had to stop playing, and didn't obviously stop playing. So we kept playing up to a point where they were like, we're going to shut down the electricity on you. So they shut down the electricity. Then our drummer kept playing, and then we all just kind of like basically started just like singing and shouting and screaming really loud, and he was still playing the full songs, and then we just did the rest of the set a cappella with drums and gave people our guitars just to have fun with, and it was really fun. It was a really good end of a gig. But yeah, half of it was without electricity.
Man, mine's not like particularly like exciting or, you know, funny, but I think it was just a gig last year. You know, spent a long time not playing and then started playing in my band. And last year we played a fest, and there were people from all over the UK and even further there. And it was just me looking out of the crowd and going, I know that person, I know that person, I know that person, and the smiles on their faces that just made it really, really awesome and nice and humbling. And it was much better than having like that way rock star moment that was just like, oh, that was super memorable. Sorry to get all mushy there, guys.
That's beautiful, breaking down the barriers. That feels like maybe a good moment to end the discussion on. Yeah, how are you feeling?
Great, it's been lovely chatting with you both.
Yes,
After playing an actual gig.
Yeah, it's been good chatting and sort of getting to hear your opinions and thoughts about things. Definitely got a couple of takeaways from this.
And it is a real honour to meet you both. I hope we all are on a stage together sometime soon.
Yeah.
Watch
Thanks for
space.
having us, Boiler Room.
Thanks, Boiler Room.
We love you, Boiler Room.